Biggie, biggie, it's bony, 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 biggie, biggie.
Hey folks, my name is Einstein Pluto, and I am the principal owner of a new organization called Boom Publishing and Broadcasting. The mission of Boom Publishing and Broadcasting is to create a fictional body of literary work where we can use our skills in composition, videography, mathematics, physics, and computer coding to create, inspire, and support the African American community seeking restoration and repair to the fabric of African American life. Also, we want to empower, enlighten, and ignite the passions of all African Americans to ensure they reach their human potential according to their individual commitment and efforts. Because at the end of the day, that's all we have is our individual commitment and effort, and that's how we maximize each person's human potential. So that's the goal of Boom Publishing and Broadcasting. One of the first projects that we're going to launch is called the Black Bottom Project. The Black Bottom Project is a video project that seeks to record and broadcast seminal stories of African Americans from all across the United States. Now, when I say seminal stories, what does that mean? I'm talking about that story, that one situation that helped shape you to make you who you are today, something that you encountered, that you experienced in your life that is a core part of who you are. We all had that moment. We all had that something that occurred as we were coming up. It may have happened at a very young age. It may have come in your adolescence. It may have happened to you as an adult. But we've got that one thing, and that's what I want to know, what I want to hear, and what I want to share with the rest of the world is your story. You tell your story in your own words. I'm talking about real life. It may be a feel-good story. It may be a painful, shameful situation that you need to get off your chest. Whatever it is, we want to hear your story. Those are the stories we want to share. In my opinion, we cannot be invisible in this country any longer. We need to hear from real people, working folk who deal with real stuff every day. Those are the stories I'm talking about. So, if you're prepared to share an intimate story in your own words, 3 to 8 minutes long, possibly 10 minutes at the most, we want to hear that. Now, during this COVID pandemic, we're going to be utilizing technology to record these stories. So we will plan on using Zoom to get the videography story from you at this time. But once the pandemic eases, we will be traveling across the United States and recording in person. So look, get on board. We want to get 1,000 stories from African Americans from all across the United States. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, share my story as one of the first in the Black Bottom Project. So I was born and reared in East Baltimore, deep East Side. Shout out to all the fellas up on the hill, Milton Avenue and Federal Street. Hey, and I'm not going to forget about the brothers in the valley. See, I come from a long line of longshoremen, starting with my grandfather. My great-grandfather was a sharecropper in South Carolina. My grandfather, after working alongside his dad in the fields, he wanted to get out. He migrated from Kershaw, South Carolina to Baltimore, Maryland. He found work as a longshoreman on the docks of Baltimore in the early 1950s. It was hard work, but the pay was good, and a few years later, my dad came up to join him. All in all, my grandfather was a longshoreman for 22 years. My father was a longshoreman for 49 years on the docks of Baltimore. And my older brother was a longshoreman for 30 years. I was one of the few and the first that did not work on the docks of Baltimore. But truth is, that's pretty much who I am in terms of temperament. That's how I was reared. And anybody that knows the waterfront of Baltimore in the 1960s to 1980 time frame knows what I'm talking about. Rough and tumble men that want to cuss and fuss and talk trash, wielding knives, carrying guns each and every day. Don't have a problem using them either. Don't have a problem fighting. Don't have a problem getting their ass kicked and getting up and fighting some more. But that's my background, and to a large extent, at my essence, that's who I am. But I was also brought up in the church, so I understand and will not discount all the lessons and values my mother instilled in me. To do the right thing, to help others, to live based on principles. So, having said that, my family loved the Chesapeake Bay. Being on the water, being out fishing, swimming, we just loved it. One of those things that happened to us, I couldn't have been more than 4 years old because I wasn't going to school yet. Maybe 1962. It's the first time that I ever encountered a white person in my entire life. But it was one of those days, one of those sunny, beautiful days. One of those days that doesn't come along very often, especially with my grandfather and my father. Because, I mean, these men, they worked 70, 80 hours a week. There was no real downtime. But bottom line, this was a day of joy, a day of happiness. And I remember that it was 80 to 85 degrees and sunny. Beautiful day. It was me, my older brother, my father, and my grandfather. Everyone was in good spirits. My father used to have one of those 3-speed Ford trucks with the gear shift on the steering column. Yeah, we were all piled in and headed to go fishing. We had a little bait. My mother had made sandwiches, and we were riding down off road near the shore, near Locust Point. I'm not exactly sure where because I was too young to really know, but we were bumping along down the dusty road. My father stopped the truck, told me it was my turn to drive. Now, clearly, I can't reach the pedals. I can barely reach the steering wheel. So he put me on his lap and he let me steer the truck down the road and into the area where we were going to go fishing. It was just one of those type of days. So eventually, we came to a little spot where we wanted to start our fishing trip that day. So we pulled off the road and started to unpack, grabbed our fishing rods, grabbed our lunches, etc., and started to put our gear down and set up our little camp where we were going to, our little base camp, if you will. And, we saw this car coming. All of a sudden, you could see the dust rising off the road. And it was just like, okay, so what's going on? Who's that? Because we was pretty isolated down there. And so we weren't expecting to see anyone else. So, and the grass was relatively tall, at least for me, so I could just see over the top of the grass. So my father and my grandfather, their entire demeanor changed. Then I noticed the light on top of the car. It was a police car. So my father and grandfather were talking in hushed tones. And now I'm thinking that something's going on here. I'm 4 years old. I don't really know what's going on, but I know something has changed. All of a sudden, my grandfather just transformed. And he starts to do this shifty, sideways walk, almost like a limping walk. And I hear the sound of keys and change jingling. And then I see the policeman. He's one of those stereotypical Southern cops. He has a big trooper hat on with the strap around the back of his head, and he's totally red-faced with a big belly and a big gun belt with the gun kind of hanging halfway off his hip. I mean, he is what I know now as one of those quintessential Southern cracker policemen of the 1950s. My grandfather starts by saying, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." And then he chuckles a little bit, saying, "Ha, ha, 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 yes, sir." My grandfather has never, ever talked to anyone in that way. The way he's talking to this cop. Oh, my goodness. The policeman says, "What you boys doing down here? You know, you ain't supposed to be down here. You trespassing. Trespassing," he says with a threat in his voice. My grandfather says, "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I know, I know. We just want to bring the children down here and do a little fishing. You know, we just going to sit here and do a little fishing." And then the policeman says, "You done bought these little pickaninnies down here?" Now, I didn't know what a pickaninny was, but I knew it wasn't anything good because of the way he said it. I mean, he went on. You know you ain't supposed to bring them boys down here. Hey, look, I'm going to leave and I'm going to come back in 10 minutes and you better be gone. And my grandfather says, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." And then the policeman starts to walk away. Now, my father is standing several steps back from my grandfather, but in between us, me and my brother, and my grandfather. And so all of a sudden, I see my grandfather reach in his pocket. And then my father takes off running after him and tackles him down to the ground and wrestles him on the ground. And I'm in shock because, come on, this never happens. My father tackling my grandfather, he took him down. And I didn't know what was really going on. And I just didn't understand. A few minutes later, they both come back. And you could tell they're wiping their face, they're shaking the dust off, but they're wiping their face, and you could tell they shed a tear. And the mood is totally different. Everything was changed. It took me a number of years to really process and understand what really happened because we never talked about it. But I know that the reality is that my grandfather always carried a knife and a gun. And what I understood was that my grandfather was about to pull his gun and shoot the cop. My father knows his dad and had to run and jump on him to stop him. Because that level of disrespect in that remote location, my grandfather contemplated and was about to shoot that cop dead. Okay, so needless to say, the mood was dashed, the day was ruined, it was over. But that was my first encounter with any white person. And if you grew up in the 60s and 70s, you know that we had our own neighborhood. I mean, you could go years, at least until you went to school, and never even see or interact with a white person. So that's my story. That's one of those stories that really came to shape me and made me understand that there was a dynamic at work that I didn't really understand and that I needed to learn about. Something I needed to be able to navigate. So that's my story. So here's the thing with this Black Bottom Project. We want to capture those stories. Your story may not have any resemblance to mine, but you know what I'm talking about now. That thing, that experience that happened to you, that helped shape you to make you who you are and how you see the world. That's what this project is all about. My goal for this project is for real black folk to come out of the shadows, to show how life in America has been and is for us, to broadcast it to the world. Okay? So, how do you get involved? Here's some information. Here's how you can get in contact with me. And remember, I've got an Angry Man blog that tells it like it is up on the website. We are the masters of improvisation. That's the only way we've lasted and thrived this long in the United States of America. Peace out.